just to be safe. So we do have that luxury for us here today, provided by the Kickapoo Lucky Eagle Casino, and we thank them for that. Our next panel, guys, gives me a great honor and pleasure to introduce these men. Certainly done a lot during their careers and will continue to do a lot. The first coach I'm going to introduce is Coach Jim Streety. Coach Jim Streety has the fourth most wins as a head coach in Texas High School Coach Association history. 343 career victories as a head coach. Came at New Braunfels and San Antonio Madison. Win 39 straight years without a losing season. Just phenomenal. In 1990, he was a THSCA president, inducted to the Texas High School Coach Association Hall of Honor in 99. He was named the San Antonio Express News Coach of the Year in 07. And Coach Streety was inducted into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame in 2015. Round of applause, Coach Jim Streety. To his right, Coach Larry Hill. Coach Hill has been the head coach and athletic coordinator at Smithson Valley for the past 25 years. Coach Hill has led the Rangers to the playoffs in the last 21 of 22 years, including the first time in school history in 1994. Under Coach Hill, the Rangers have been to 3 state championship games, 6 state semifinals, and 9 state quarterfinals, along with 11 regional finals. He has compiled a record of 225-48 record at Smithson Valley with a total of 257 victories. Larry and his wife, Lori, have 2 grown sons, Alan and Brian, and the Hills are members of the Oakwood Baptist Church in New Braunfels. Coach Larry Hill. Coach Pete Fredenberg. Coach Pete Fredenberg is currently the head coach at the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor. Built the program into a national power after starting from scratch 20 years ago. Coach Fredenberg guided the crew to its first national title in 2016. Coach Fredenberg has an overall record of 210-39 over 20 seasons and has guided the crew to 16 postseason berths. He was named AFCA Division III National Coach of the Year in 2016 and was named the Liberty Mutual Division III National Coach of the Year in 2013. He was also elected to the Texas Sports Hall of Fame and enshrined in April of 2018. Coach Fredenberg and his wife have 3 children and 9 grandchildren. Coach Pete Fredenberg. Just interesting story on Coach Fredenberg when he was on the clinic circuit. I have to tell this one. This is one of my favorites. So he opens it up at the Alamo Clinic, I believe, and he had just fresh off the national title, and he comes in and he goes, wow, you know, I'm still on cloud 9 and fresh off the title and, you know, walking with your chest out. And he said, you know what? I was having dinner with my wife. And he tells his wife, honey, did you ever believe in your wildest dreams that we'd be a national champion? And his wife replied, honey, you're not in my wildest dreams, so I wouldn't know. Coach Pete Fredenberg, guys.
Appreciate you guys coming. I mean, enjoy it. Here you go. Coach Streety, how did you adjust to the evolution of the game and manage to be so successful?
I'm not sure I adjusted. No, I think it's a process. Over time, you realize that things are changing from when you lined up in 2 tight ends and 2 backs or 3 backs and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But so eventually you start taking some of those guys out of the backfield and spreading out some of those receivers a little bit. But I think it's been a good thing. I think it's been a great thing. I think the game of football is exciting right now as it's ever been. And I think the guys that are coaching the game now are as good as they've ever been. And it's a real challenge, particularly on the defensive side these days. But I just think that eventually we all came to know that that the game was changing and that we had to change if we were going to keep doing what we were doing. And I remember back, I guess, in the early '90s, especially when the one back came into vogue a lot more, and we started actually not being under center for every snap that we took, and I think it's just a credit to the coaches that continued that evolution to what it is today. And my goodness, the things that I see coaches doing today is pretty amazing. In the kids, that they can coach the kids and teach the kids to pick up some of the things that are done today. Is a lot of credit to the coaches.
Coach Fredenberg, you went from high school to college pretty quick. What was your biggest adjustment when you got there?
I think the biggest adjustment when I went from Giddings High School to Baylor University was just the quality of athletes and that you had to play against. The speed of the game was increased, but the reality, it's all basically, to me, it's the same. You develop trust with kids. You try to coach them to know that they can count on you and you can count on them. I really tried to do that at high school. I had an incredible experience coaching at New Braunfels High School with Streety, then going to Giddings. And then when I went to Baylor University, I worked with Corky Nelson. All of it was a learning process, and I think what Streety was talking about of just how the game has changed, you always I always believed in having a great defense, and then things that really attacked us well was the things that I wanted to implement on offense. And people that did a great job of running different, whether it's a spread offense or a power eye, if they did good things that really impacted us on defense, is how it helped me and develop my philosophy of offense and defense. But as far as the difference in high school and college, it was not, in my opinion, not a lot. It was just bigger crowds, and I really enjoyed my time at Baylor, and it's been a joy for me to be at Mary Hardin Baylor. And I really love being here. Bud Curtis, every time I listen to him, he teaches me something that I take back and learn from. And Okie and Hector have been great. This has just always been a great time for me, and I appreciate you asking me to be here.
Larry, when you came to Smithson Valley, there were no powerhouse. You changed that, and it continues today. Why is Smithson Valley so successful year in and year out?
Well, I think it's probably like most programs who've had a little bit of success over an extended period of time. It's probably not one thing, is it continuity of staff or stability of staff? We have had a number of coaches that have been there a good while. Is it pure feeder programs that we have, great access and control over? Yes. Is it good community support? Yes. Some talented football players, and I think it's all of that. I think you throw all that in the blender, and that allows you to have some success. And then when you have success, then I think it makes the next round of success not easy, but easier. And now you look up after 25 years, and we've had a whole generation of players who've come through that really don't know that it can be and used to be another way. And while you at times have to fight complacency, there certainly is a belief system there that really those guys that are playing for us now, they didn't earn that. Someone else did that for them, but it is part of our overall success. So I'm not sure, to answer your question, if it's any one thing, but it's probably all of those things. And for me personally as the head coach, it's been a lot of guys that are in this room. You learn a lot when you get your tail kicked. And there's some of the kickers of my tail are sitting in this room right now. And, you're either forced to, what's the old saying about the dinosaur, you adapt or die. And, when you go up against really good football coaches and good football staffs, you have to constantly be kind of like what Coach Streety was talking about, evaluating yourself and evaluating what you do. Is this still good enough? Even though we might have won last year, is this still good enough with who's on next year's schedule, the things they're going to do to try to beat you? The game, it's changing, like Coach said. And so I think that's been a big part of it, too. We've tried not to be afraid to tweak what we do and not just sit on our hands and stand pat because we've had a little bit of success.
Okay, this is a question for all three of you. What advice would you give a first-year coach, Coach Streety? What advice would you give a first-year coach nowadays?
Well, make sure you have a core teaching certification. For one thing, make sure you get your bus driver certification. Make sure you, all the things that, I don't know, man. What gets thrown at these guys these days, hell, I'm glad I'm where I am. But my advice has always been that coach the kids just like they're your own. Coach them just like they were your own and build relationships with them, because those kids are there to have fun. Those kids are there a lot of times just because their buddies are there, not because they're a good athlete or a good player. And make it an enjoyable experience for them. Make sure that you teach them a lot of things that have very little to do with football. Life lessons, things of that nature. And I think if you can begin with that type of attitude as a young coach, that your chances of staying with the profession and advancing in the profession are going to be a lot greater than if you tend to stick around just because of what may be in it for yourself.
I think my thought would be very similar to coaches, but I would advise young coaches to, if you can, get in with the best system and the best coaching staff that you can find, regardless of your title. As opposed to another job at another school with a higher degree of responsibility or a bigger title, but maybe situation's not as good, whether the staff's not as good, they're not moral men, or they're not treating kids right, or they're not really football guys. And then you look up in 10, 12 years and you've been the defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator, but you haven't really learned how to do it like guys like these and others in this room would have taught you to do it. And so I would advise not chasing titles, but chase the best staff and the best culture you can find. And, guys like myself and others were just so fortunate early in their career to fall into those kinds of staffs. I didn't deserve it. I didn't do anything to earn it. I just got a chance to do it. But I often think if I hadn't have, what would have been the outcome? And I'm scared to say the answer to that. But so that would be my advice. Find somewhere if you can, and find the best staff, head coach, best coach staff, best culture you can find, and then I think your career will grow from there.
Thanks. I tell my GAs all the time, and the guys that are just coming on board, I think the most important thing for them to understand is what you're going to get out of these 2 years while you're working on your master's is exactly what you put into it. And the reality of studying the game, understanding the game, and giving don't ask for more and more to do. The more trust and confidence the coaches have in you, it just means that you're doing a better job and you're working at it. And do it with great enthusiasm. I think that our guys have to sometimes come in the idea, well, they've got a coach's cap and a whistle, and all of a sudden now they're in charge and can teach things to guys, and by God, they better learn it and they better do it like I tell them. The reality, and it was very indicative for me, and it was a great opportunity for me to watch Corky Nelson coach Mike Singletary. Mike Singletary was an incredible football player, but he attributes his success primarily to Corky Nelson because Corky pushed him way past the things that he thought he could accomplish. And the reason that he did was that Mike absolutely trusted Corky and Corky trusted him. That bond and that word that I use so much about trust is so important to me because it's not something that just happens. It's a relationship and an established relationship that is built and a bond built between a coach and a player. So that's an incredible thing that every young coach needs to work on, is to know that if you're going to deal with a youngster, you're going to have the opportunity to coach him. You better know how to do it and do it positively, and then do it with a great deal of enthusiasm.
Coach Treaty, you've been a consistent winner when you were coaching. What do you feel were the key ingredients to being consistent as a leader on and off the field?
Having a good running back. I think Coach Hill mentioned having a lot of stability and a lot of continuity in staff. I think that's huge in being consistent, and I was very fortunate over the years to have consistency in staff, and when I did have change, when I did have guys that leave and moved on to bigger and better things, it was never a mass exodus. It was a guy would leave and a guy would take a guy with him or two. And I was always a guy that I moved people up quite a bit in our system, and I was able to do that. And I think that's a thing that is a way to attract young coaches and get them to stick with you, is that if they aspire to move up, they know that you will consider them when that opportunity arises. But other than that, the consistency and quality of staff, we all know that the coaches. I always tell my guys that the coaching team better be the best team on campus, and we have to look out for each other. We have to support each other. We may not always agree with what's happening or how things are going, but we have to be a team as well, because I think the players pick up on that. When the players see the coaching team, I think that's the very first step in building that team chemistry that you need. And I've always been, and I won't dwell on that, but I've always been really big on being conscious of leadership and team chemistry and those kind of things. But I think it always starts with the staff.
Coach Hill, coming from a coaching family, what influence did your father and brother Glenn have in your coaching profession?
Well, Glenn had very little. But my dad was and remains and always will be my hero. I knew what coaching was like just from where I grew up. And my dad won a bunch of games in a short period of time. And so, people have asked before, says, well, all the winning and all that. That's not really what I remember the most of my dad. I don't remember any of the scores of the games or anything. I was there, of course, ball boy in the field house, all that. But, what I remember the most, and I guess I always knew I was going to coach because that's just what my dad did. And I don't think there was ever really a consideration that I was going to do anything else. So But what I really remember, we ran to the store one day to get something. My brother, he got my brother and I in a truck and took us to the store. We had to get something. And a guy comes running across the store, just almost sprinting towards my dad. And I don't remember everything that he told him, but it's a pretty sad story, real frankly. And he says, you know, the only reason I didn't throw in the towel, and I remember the word suicide being considered, is all those things you used to say about not quitting, sticking to it, persevering. You know, he just went on and on. And, you know, I ball-boyed from my dad, and when the guy left, I said, I don't remember him. You know, I thought I remembered all the players. The guy, as Dad told the story, the guy wasn't any good at all. He wasn't a stud player. He wasn't a guy that hardly ever got on the field, you know. So I think I remember that moment mainly because that's the first time it really dawned on me that he not just coaching to win the game on the scoreboard. He's having an impact on these guys. And I wasn't very old, so, you know, I wasn't prone to deep thought or anything. But that struck me right there. And that you ask who's the biggest influence. Well, certainly that he would have been for me anyway. And then two other guys, of course, I played college football for Joe George, and then he got out of coaching college football right as I graduated from college, got through playing for him. So right away, right out of college, I'm at what is now a 6A program, coaching the quarterbacks. You know, I don't deserve that kind of job coming right out of school, but I got it because of him. I didn't do anything to deserve it. I just got it. And so for playing for him for 4 years, coaching for him for 6 years, you know, shaped a lot of who I am as a coach. And then after a short head coaching stint, I got a chance to work for Mike Robbins, who's here today. He's going to be on one of the discussion panels here in a minute. And, you know, just what a great 2 years over at Clark, just learning. Best I've ever seen at relating to kids. Best I've ever seen about getting a kid ready to play and feeling good about himself. Unmatched. And so, you know, I've just been real lucky. And I don't know that I've deserved any of it, but I'm going to take every bit of it.
Coach Fredenberg, you've been a consistent winner. What do you feel were the key ingredients to being consistent as a leader on and off the field?
Yeah, you know, this is something that I'll talk about trust so many times, but we do it in the off season. As we come back in January, we elect what we call a unity council, and these guys are made up of guys that the team put in leadership position. I challenge each one of them. I said, you don't have to do this if you're uncomfortable, but your teammates have put you in a position and want you to be the leaders of these teams. Then we go through a series in our off-season program, and we meet weekly with our unity council, and I go through every one of their guys. We do a deal that they draft their teams. So we put up a big board with everybody there, all of the players are there, and we put up a big board, and the Unity Council goes through and drafts players in order that they want on their football team. And they watch who's being picked. I know probably psychologists would really disappoint with that, but what I want them to see is who's trusted and who's not trusted, and what are they going to do about it. And then the leaders, we meet weekly and talk about every one of their players on their team, on their individual teams. So there's like 6 teams in our off season that are being led by the guys that the team have put them in leadership roles. We go through every one of those guys, and are they achieving the things that they need to achieve to where you can trust them? And if they say no, then they have to change that behavior. That's their responsibility. But again, we meet weekly with our leadership guys and go through that. And I think that has developed not only them as leaders to where they have to confront somebody that's not doing and not taking the responsibility or not committing themselves strongly enough to the football team as a whole. It helps them as leaders, but it also brings teammates along to get in what is expected of a commitment level that we ask our players to be.
Okay, last question. This will be the same question for all three of you. Why did you go into coaching? And outside of a parent, who was your most important mentor? And then give me your final thoughts, if you have any.
Well, I got into coaching because of my high school coach as well. I grew up in a small town, and where you play all the sports, and one season leads to the next, and I pretty much knew from my high school days that I wanted to be a coach. But I got off to college and started off as an accounting major for about 3 semesters, and then I finally came to my senses and got on track for education. And I guess as far as influences are concerned, it probably I got hired for my first job in junior high school in San Marcos by a guy named Owen Goodnight, and he was a pretty much of a legendary coach at that time back in the 60s in Central Texas, and I had come through college pretty much being familiar with him, and right after he hired me, though, he retired, and a guy named David Howard became the head coach there, and I worked there for 3 years, and then moved to New Braunfels, and it just kind of evolved because New Braunfels was terrible. They were really bad, but a guy named Bobby Gill came in there after I was there a couple of years, and was there a couple of years, and Coach Fredenberg joined us at that time, and we started building a staff of a different kind of guys. And then he left, and they gave me the job, and I was able to hire some guys that we were all very young, and we didn't have much of an idea of what we were doing, but we knew we liked kids, and the kids liked us, and we worked hard, and we learned, and we got better as we went. And eventually, after my stint there, Jerry Kumalander hired me to go to San Antonio Madison, and I was, we'd had some success there in New Braunfels, and I kind of thought I had it figured out until I got over there, and the competition got a little tougher, and Jerry Kumalander, the stability of his career and his work ethic made a huge impression on me over the time that I was there. And he was a guy that stood up for the coaches, and we were in a multiple school system, which is a little different, as you guys know, they're in those scenarios. But he was a guy that would stand up for the coaches and made those jobs there as good as they could possibly be. And I just evolved over the years from those types of experiences with guys that were tough guys that stood their ground when times got tough, and sometimes they did. But I think that's pretty much what my influence was. And as far as final thoughts, mine are the same. I mean, this is a great atmosphere. I'm honored to be here. I don't think I've been to all. I know I haven't been to all 25, but I think I might have been to 23 or so of these clinics, and the relationships that we've had, the times that we've had have been awesome. And to Hector and Oki, my hats are off to you guys, and appreciate it.
Oki, Streety got a little long-winded there. Would you do the question again? I'm sorry.
Why did you get into coaching? And outside of a parent, who was your most important mentor? Pete, you're going to have to
Okay, I'm with you now. I got sidetracked there a minute. So, well, I won't rehash. I mentioned my father and Joe George and Mike Robbins, and I won't go through those stories again. But those guys have probably had the biggest single influence on me of what we, threads of what we do in our program have come from those programs. So those were probably the biggest influences on me. But to further that, as I became a coach and then a head coach, other guys in the profession that you go against or compete against or know about, and then you go to their place and spend time with them, and they're willing to share and sit down with you and open up what they do to you. And some of those guys are in this room. D.W. Rutledge was one when I was a young head coach that willingly spent time with a 28-year-old head coach who got the job, and then the next day suddenly realized he didn't know what he was doing, and oh crap, now what? Guys like him, Dub Ferris, a lot of you know Coach Ferris as an athletic director. You forget he won 1 million games before that. When he was at Dickinson, spent time with the staff that I was on, and this guy to my left, Coach Streety. I know the years I was at Clark, and then when I was at Smithson Valley, swapping ideas, sharing ideas. That's what makes coaching so unique. Is you're trying to beat each other's brains out, but at the same time you have a high regard for one another, and you're willing to share with them, and you with them. So I think that's been a big influence on me. Just the coaching profession in general, including these guys that I've named, and I always want to make sure that I hope that we're trying to do that same thing. As far as closing remarks, Okie, again, I thank you for the opportunity to be here. This and things like it are great. I've been here. I hadn't been here 20 some odd times. I've been more in the 4, 5, 6 range, but just an opportunity to not only share about guys who've helped me. Maybe that's a help to some younger guys in the room, which most of them are younger than me now. So I thank you for having us, and I'll let Coach Fredenberg finish up.
Yes, sir, thanks. I had a great opportunity. Just recently I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was a tremendous honor, but in order to make the acceptance speech, I really had to think through all of this question, and it was amazing because Lou Holt said, there's 2 great days in your life. Number one, the day you're born, and then the day you realize why you were born. And so looking back on your life, you wonder, why in the world am I in this profession? It's because I love to watch coaches. I love watching Joe talk about his dad and get emotional about it. I love the passion that we all have for the kids and the people that we deal with. How did I learn that? I learned it because I worked with Jim Streety and the coaches that we had. Living a purposeful life is being surrounded by people that you really love and that you respect. And that was a great honor, and that's when I fell in love with coaching, was working with them. And I had a great opportunity to work with Corky Nelson and Grant Taft and to understand how you run a football program with great integrity and still develop the kind of level of passion that you have to have as a coach and as a player to be successful. And then coming to clinics like this, now this is, we can drink a lot of beer here, and it's always great. But man, you always pick up something from guys that have the passion for the profession and love to teach the game that we all love so much. Thanks so much for allowing me to be a part of it. Appreciate it.
Any questions, guys? Larry, I got a question for you. How was it to have Jimbo Amberson as your roommate at Saul Ross?
Well, he was not my roommate. I want to start with that deal.
Okay. Well, he always said he was your roommate.
The main thing I remember about Jimbo is bitching because I didn't throw the ball to the tight end enough. And to be fair, I probably should have, because he was a heck of a player and a good friend. And anyway, those of you who know Jimbo.
No questions? Guys, appreciate you coming. privilege and an honor. And on behalf of Dos Amigos, we got a little token of our appreciation. Eric? We take 5 minutes.
Forever Memories, Antiques, and Collectibles is your source for vintage, antique, collectibles, vinyl records, and more. Located at 206 East Jackson in historic downtown Harlingen, it's Forever Memories, Antiques, and Collectibles. It's a step back in time with a soundtrack like none other. Open Monday through Saturday, filled with memories and more. Forever Memories is for you.
At Martinez Family Practice, they offer health care and are right now accepting primary care patients. Right now, they are giving athletes the chance to get in their sports physicals at just $20. Angelica Martinez and the Martinez Family Practice in Eagle Pass.
The Harlingen Downtown District has a bit of everything, my friends, and here's an invitation for you to visit and experience a friendly environment with the taste of local business and a variety of shopping, dining, and entertainment throughout the year. Vintage shops loaded with collectibles from the past, dining that caters to all, boutiques, quilting, salons, live entertainment, and don't forget about market days on the first Saturday of each month on Jackson Street and Art Night the last Friday of the month. It's the Harlingen Downtown District, and the invitation is for you. Shop Downtown Harlingen today.